All right. So you are listening to the first episode of Only One in the Group. I started this podcast because I just wanted to attempt to find common ground um, amongst the people in my life. I think the podcast goal is just to find common ground amongst humans who may not share the same features. I'd like to have guests that I have on the podcast. I want me and my guests to share a moment about being a minority amongst the majority. I want to talk about the moments where people have found themselves as the only one in the room, to be other, like you're in a room full of people and you're the only person that's bald or black or Asian or have gay parents, or the only woman or the only man in the room, the only one without a beard in the room, like I really just want this podcast to show how others have been made the minority in their lives and then explore how they felt in that situation. Um, the main goal, an additional goal of the podcast, is to promote more empathy for minorities. It's an attempt to evolve and grow into a more tolerating and accepting society if we can have empathy for minorities. This podcast promotes vulnerability, which is, I think, something we say we love, but it is incredibly hard to practice every day. Um, when I was like researching this podcast and just trying to figure out like how to start a podcast, one of the bullet points was pick a topic that you love that you could talk about for a long time. And I am not sure what I would want to talk about for 15 or 30 minutes or what my guests would want to hear, but I can tell you that I will be vulnerable. And so I just thought like, okay, I'm gonna have I can definitely be talk for 15 minutes. I can definitely talk for 30 minutes and be incredibly vulnerable. And I think, like I said before, I think we say that we love vulnerability. Um, but it is incredibly hard to practice every day. I think we as humans, we say that we love vulnerability. We want people to open up to us. We want people to be honest, to share their raw emotions and how they feel and how they're feeling in this moment. But they're not doing the same. I think how I approach vulnerability today in my personal life is I will be vulnerable with you if you are vulnerable with me. I will share with you if you will share with me. And then if the person is not very vulnerable, if they're not revealing any kind of like personal information about themselves that they may be embarrassed or ashamed or uncomfortable about, if the other person is not really revealing any parts of themselves like that to me, I won't do it with them. They haven't earned my vulnerability. And as I get older, I realize that vulnerability, and I sound like Brene Brown. Of course, this is like inspired by Brene Brown. I am that basic bitch. What up? Um, but like Brene Brown, she talks about this in like many of her books and in her speeches and talks. She talks about how hard it is to be vulnerable, but how powerful it is. Being vulnerable is a superpower. Being able to tell someone, anyone in this moment, exactly how you feel and exactly what you need, that's a big deal. Like, and I had to learn that in therapy. Like, my therapist she taught me that you're not bad. You're not weak. You're not a terrible person if you say, hey, you've hurt my feelings. You are allowed to tell people when they hurt your feelings, and it doesn't make you a weak pussy bitch. It makes you very powerful and very clear. And so, like, just just like hearing that, it just really emphasized to me that vulnerability is a superpower, and it's something I want to pull out of my guests. But I will meet my guests halfway, and I will share vulnerable information about myself. So don't feel like on the podcast, only one in the group, that you're still the only one in the group. I'm right there with you, metaphorically, in podcast land. Yeah. So the podcast theme, the topic is about being a minority, vulnerability, and isolation. That's just simply what it is. Um, this podcast will probably have like a hashtag like mental health or vulnerability search. But yeah, the podcast is about vulnerability, being a minority, and isolation, which I think is something we feel very often and quite frequently. It's incredibly insane that we have all of this technology. We have this like big wide world of the internet connecting all of us to places and corners of the internet and finding people we identify with and that we love. Like the internet connects us to so many people, and yet we have never felt more isolated, more disassociated, more mentally ill as a society. Like we felt it more than ever. And so I think this is why the podcast is pretty special, is I think like we are attempting to make a moment, or I am attempting to make a moment of just like a real, authentic, vulnerable connection with my guest. Um, so yeah, I'm very excited about it. I think the first episode of the podcast, I want to talk about the actual art. So the picture that you see for the only one in the group podcast, produced and ran by yours truly, Katera Borkowski. Yeah. Um, this podcast, the first episode, I want to talk about my experience of being the only Black girl in film club. Yeah. So I joined film club in college because I liked films, and I thought that I could hang with the film club crowd because I spent a summer in Bowling Green renting Criterion films because we had a crap ton of Criterion films at our college library that you could rent out, and it was absolutely free tuition. But but yeah, I spent a summer watching movies, and I thought, oh my God, okay, film club. Like I want to make new friends. I want to meet hot dudes. Well, let's join a club. And college is full of them. And so film club was one I thought that I could join. I thought that I could convince and come off as a film club nerd to the people in that group, but I think it was like quickly figured out that I wasn't really that much of a film snob. Um, I think like one of the things that really gave it away was like there was like one of the meetings where someone brought up the movie Taxi Driver, and I was like, that guy is crazy. I did not enjoy Taxi Driver. I thought it was a incredibly uncomfortable, difficult movie to watch. The Robert De Niro character, who is just a mentally insane person. Like, you shouldn't be driving cabs, sir. You need to be in a mental hospital. But he's driving cabs, and he's driving cabs for this child sex worker. Are you kidding me? This man is a crazy person, and he should have turned the girl over to authorities and got her off the street. But instead, he's like gonna be her knight in shining armor and protect her while she's a sex worker on the street. And this is a child. I hated this man. And like I went on this rant in front of them, and they were just like, whoa, it was like Robert De Niro's best role. And I was like, whatever. I'm never down with that. Hated it. And then I love The Godfather. And I said like, oh, The Godfather is like a great film. And they were like, yeah, everybody. Of course, that's just common knowledge. The Godfather is a great film. But you know what's not a great film that everybody can agree on? And that is Forrest Gump. And let me tell you, I'm appalled that not everybody agrees on the film Forrest Gump. I fought for this and I ranted about this in film club. Maybe that's why I didn't make friends because I ranted. But I will really go hard and support Forrest Gump. That was a great film. Tom Hanks can do no wrong, even though his son is Chet, and Chet is embarrassing. He can do no wrong. But I love Forrest Gump, and I know that's when I lost film club's respect. I know that's when I lost their respect. That is when they were like, she has no taste. And I don't care. I still go hard for Forrest Gump. 2025, still a great film. I wish it was a true story. I will be dead honest. I thought it was a true story until middle school. There you go. I really did. I thought like this is how America was until well into middle school. And well, not even well, I think in middle school, because we started history classes, and I was like, oh, Forrest wasn't there. It's so embarrassing. But I loved that film. Like, yeah, man. I just was so out of my depth in that club, but I like stayed because I was I think I maybe thought one of the guys was hot. But also too, like, I think the film club was on a Tuesday or Wednesday night. I didn't have anything going on. I lived on campus. I went until I didn't want to go anymore. And I never convinced any of those people that I was a film snob in the slightest. Uh, yeah, like for one, I didn't know who the director Alfred Hitchcock was. But our film club president was like obsessed with Alfred Hitchcock. And actually, like, I still have my film club t-shirt. But my film club, like our film club t-shirt that year was based off the film Vertigo. And I had pretended to see the film. And when they like brought it up, they were like, hey, you know this movie, Vertigo? It's like we wanted to make it the theme of our t-shirts. And I was like, oh yeah, I know that film. Great visuals. That is my like standard line for if I don't know a film, but like everyone else is saying that it's good and I want to go along with the group. I just go, yeah, no, man, great visuals, great shots, all about it. um, but to this day, I still have not seen the movie Vertigo. I know that I do know that Hitchcock directed the Birds movie and Psycho, and I learned that from film club. I've not seen any of his films, um, but I can at least my line for Alfred Hitchcock. If someone's like, "Oh, what do you think about Alfred Hitchcock as a director?" or I'm really Alfred Hitchcock is one of my favorite directors. I always go, he really has a way of building suspense in his shots. I have no clue what that line means, but I think it sounds really awesome. Um, yeah, no, I told them my favorite director was Quentin Tarantino. And again, they were all like, duh, like everybody's favorite director is Quentin Tarantino. And I'm just like, okay, fine. I'm just not naming enough like indie weird directors and movies for them to like truly take me seriously. But like I said, I joined film club to make friends. I moved almost 4 hours away from home to this new college at WKU in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And the school's population was like 90 something percent white. It was like painfully isolating white. And like the black people I did see on campus, they were playing sports and in sororities and fraternities, which I could not afford because I was there on a foster care scholarship to begin with. And so I had free tuition in state. I'm not athletic, I'm not healthy. So like the few black people that were on campus at WKU were like in sports and fraternities and sororities. And I didn't have the money. I didn't have the time. Like the whole sorority culture, and you have to work and pay your dues. It just wasn't for me, which is so funny because I like am such a people pleaser and go along with the group. But I honestly just think those girls would pressure me to wear makeup every day, and I'm just not fucking about it, dog. I do not want to wear makeup every day. Who the fuck has time for that? I mean, if you do, God bless you. That's probably like your like self-care beauty time to yourself, but I rather have more sleep.